We need to start this explainer with a very serious, very urgent medical reality. If you're over 60 years old, the most lethal cardiac events usually don't announce themselves with dramatic chest pain, a numb left arm, or a sudden collapse. Instead, they build up silently, in the dark. We're talking about catastrophic events that happen almost exclusively between midnight and 6 a.m. That's a time with no warning, nor time to call for help, and frankly, often no second chance. Today, we're going to systematically expose the ordinary evening habits that are triggering these silent physiological crises. More importantly, we're going to establish a rigorous, step-by-step protocol to stop them cold.
Let's look at a truly staggering number, 67%. This comes straight from a landmark study in the European Heart Journal that tracked tens of thousands of adults. What they discovered is alarming. Individuals who engage in a specific set of seemingly normal nighttime habits face a 67% higher risk of dying from a sleep-related cardiovascular event. Think about that. That isn't just a marginal bump in risk. That is literally the difference between surviving the night and suffering a fatal cardiac event in your sleep. Poor nighttime habits create a massive biological debt, and that debt is collected quietly in the dark. We absolutely have to understand exactly why this happens.
The underlying physiological danger really comes down to a stark biological contrast. When you're under 60, your cardiovascular system is incredibly adaptable. It possesses active backup mechanisms that can compensate for stress, even while you sleep. But once you cross 60, things change. Arterial walls stiffen up, pressure regulation just isn't as precise, and those protective hormonal signals start to weaken. Basically, your body is suddenly running on a highly vulnerable skeleton crew. Your margin for error is completely gone. Nighttime is supposed to be your body's biological reset, but if you throw stress at a system that's already running on a skeleton crew, the results can be catastrophic.
Let's move to Section 1, Digestive and Hemodynamic Conflict.
Here's what happens when you consume a heavy meal late in the evening. Your cardiovascular system is trying to power down for its critical nighttime recovery. But at the exact same time, you're ordering it to send a massive surge of blood to your gut to process that food. Clinical researchers found that demanding this sudden blood flow forces an average 22-point spike in your blood pressure. And worse, that spike is sustained for up to 3 hours. Think about the gravity of this. During the exact window when your aging heart absolutely requires rest, you are subjecting it to a 22-point pressure surge while lying completely flat. That directly triggers acid reflux and vagal nerve stimulation, which can actually induce fatal irregular heart rhythms.
Next up is Section 2, Vascular Stress and Medication Timing. This is absolutely crucial. Statistically, nearly 60% of seniors make the grave mistake of taking their vital blood pressure medication exclusively in the morning. They assume that timing doesn't really matter, but in cardiology, timing is everything. This mistake is lethal because of something called nocturnal hypertension. Normally, your blood pressure should dip by 10 to 20% while you sleep, but for many older adults, it fails to dip, and instead, it violently surges in the early morning hours. Imagine a severe pressure surge hitting unbraced, stiffened arterial walls at 3 a.m. It is highly likely to rupture vulnerable plaque inside a coronary artery and form lethal clots. If you took your medication at 8 a.m. the day before, it is completely worn off by the time this 3 a.m. crisis hits. You are leaving yourself totally unprotected during your most vulnerable hours. When many researchers switched all older adult patient medication to nighttime dosing, they saw a 35% drop in mortality and heart attack risk.
Look at the clinical data here. Simply shifting blood pressure medication to the evening intercepts this nocturnal threat with staggering results. We're talking about a 45% reduction in heart attacks, a 49% reduction in heart failure, and an unbelievable 66% reduction in stroke risk. Taking your medication at bedtime ensures it is working at its absolute peak strength exactly when those nocturnal hypertension surges try to strike. I want to be clear, this isn't just some minor lifestyle tip. This is a massive, life-saving clinical adjustment that you need to discuss immediately with your physician.
Moving on to Section 3, Autonomic Shock and Airway Collapse.
Now we need to talk about physiological crises driven by your bedroom environment and the physical state of your body as you close your eyes. So many people over 60 deliberately stop drinking water in the afternoon. Why? Simply to avoid a nighttime trip to the bathroom. It sounds logical, but the biological consequence is a silent dehydration trap. Fully hydrated blood flows freely, like water. But dehydrated blood? It becomes highly viscous. It thickens up, like honey. Pumping thick, highly viscous blood through stiff, narrowed arteries, while your heart rate is naturally slowed during sleep, is exactly how early morning strokes cluster and form. You simply cannot trade cardiovascular survival just to get an uninterrupted sleep cycle.
And it's not just dehydration. Think about these seemingly benign environmental habits and their severe biological impacts. Sleeping flat on your back, gravity forces your airway to collapse, triggering sleep apnea, which then floods your sleeping body with massive surges of adrenaline and cortisol. What about evening screen time? That blue light completely suppresses your melatonin, which actually acts as a critical antioxidant shield for your blood vessels. Even setting your room temperature above 22 degrees Celsius or 72 degrees Fahrenheit forces your heart to work overtime just to dissipate heat, keeping your heart rate elevated and your vessels dilated. These habits actively trigger autonomic shock while you remain completely asleep. Let's dive into Section 4, the clinical evening protocol.
Okay, we've diagnosed the life-threatening triggers. Now we have to establish a rigorous, uncompromising, step-by-step protocol to neutralize them. The human body is incredibly resilient, but it requires the correct parameters to actually execute its biological reset. That starts with deactivating chronic emotional stress, which otherwise elevates your nighttime cortisol and prevents your blood pressure from dipping. So, 30 minutes before sleep, you must execute the 4-7-8 clinical breathing procedure. You inhale for 4 counts, hold that breath for 7 counts, and exhale slowly for 8 counts. Make no mistake, this isn't just a casual relaxation trick. It is a targeted physiological maneuver designed to deliberately deactivate your sympathetic nervous system's stress response, physically forcing your heart rate and blood pressure to drop. And here is the ultimate, non-negotiable step-by-step evening timeline required to protect your cardiovascular system and ensure your survival through the night. At 6 p.m., you consume your final light meal, completely eliminating that hemodynamic conflict. At 7 p.m., pending your doctor's approval, you take your evening blood pressure medications alongside exactly 8 ounces of water to prevent viscous blood clotting. By 8 p.m., you absolutely cease all screen time to protect your vascular melatonin. At 9 p.m., set your room temperature firmly between 18 and 22 degrees Celsius to drop your cardiac resistance. And finally, at 10 p.m., you get into bed and initiate side sleeping to mechanically prevent your airway from collapsing. This timeline is a precise medical shield. Which brings us to our final, uncompromising inquiry for you. Which of these silent, lethal triggers will you neutralize tonight before it's too late? I cannot emphasize this enough. These are not minor lifestyle suggestions. They are critical medical directives. The biological damage from a late meal, skipped medication, thick blood, and an obstructed airway is accumulating right now. The time to take action isn't next week. It isn't after your next physical. The time to implement this protocol is tonight. Take immediate control of your evening routine, protect your cardiovascular system, and ensure that your body has the exact conditions it needs to survive the dark.